Dawn Richards is a human resource trainer and consultant who has been working in the field for 30 plus years. For the last 24 years, she has been the CEO of DRA Consulting, a company which specializes in customer service transformation for companies. Her area of expertise is in helping individuals shift psychologically, mentally, and emotionally so they can move to the next level of their lives, personally and professionally. And also my mummy. Oh my gosh, I'm excited to interview you today, and I think we're going to have a really great interview.
Well, you know, at the top of every interview, I like to make the comment that I'm a very serious person.
Right. So for persons who've not seen you
Interacted
before
with me, yes.
in any of my videos, on any of my platforms, they might buy that.
Yes, yes.
But for anyone else who's seen you, well, I don't need to say anything further because
But that's how we onboard.
Because you all know the truth.
But that's how we onboard new persons.
Right.
Right.
Right. Pull the wool over their eyes and then
Sort of.
slowly
Reveal.
Right.
Then the big reveal.
Right. Okay, so
I'm actually happy to be here as well. Thank you for having me.
Okay. You don't want to tell everyone that you bought this top for me as well? And
Well, you just did.
And that it's symbolic?
And I think that was very symbolic on your part because it was you interviewing me and I bought the top. So I thought that was very symbolic.
You're so silly. Okay, so there's several different topics we're going to talk about today. Okay. But I'm going to start off talking about customer service and some of the interventions that DRA Consulting does. And first I'm going to do a little bit of disambiguation, and I hope that's a word.
That one kind of blew me back toward the chair.
So I'm curious to know, before we delve a little deeper, how you define customer service.
We speak to 3 levels of engagement with the customer. The lowest level is customer service. Why? Because every organization delivers some level of service. And that service at the most basic level can be poor, good, mediocre, excellent, anywhere in between. So customer service at that level is not an area at a level that any organization wants to be at anymore. One up from customer service is, and of course customer service is every time an organization has to deliver a product or a service to a paying customer, you deliver service. So that's the most basic understanding of customer service. It's an exchange of value. Sometimes that exchange can be equal or it can be very unequal. But when an organization is in the customer service domain, anything can happen on that continuum, because it means depending on who you meet, that's the quality of service you're going to get. So if somebody's having a rough day, you may very well get a manicure stare. And what is a manicure stare? Well, in foreign countries, they have the deer in the headlights. In the Caribbean, we don't have as many deer, so we have coined the phrase at DRA Consulting, the manicure stare. Is that stare that kind of like what you're doing now? It's like just looking at someone with a very blank facial expression, and we get it a lot. You walk up to a counter and the person's just sitting there looking, standing there watching you. No words, just this glazed over look. So customer service is at the most basic, just an exchange. It's very transactional. When an organization wants to step up its game, it goes up to customer friendliness, where, you know, people are making an effort, and it is not quite a poor level of service, but it is still not consistent enough. And then we go up to customer experience. So what is customer experience? Customer experience happens when an organization in its head has decided that it is going to stand out from the crowd in the area of service delivery. And it decides every point at which a customer interacts with us, that experience is going to be heavenly. And so that organization takes a look at all of the points of intersection and decides, okay, what is the experience going to be like at this point? What is it going to be like at the next point. And we call that the customer journey. And all along the customer journey, you find a consistency in the level of delivery. And the outcome of that is customer delight. What organizations are, and then we're now headed to a fourth level, which is total customer experience management. It is, if we thought customer experience was managing all of those intersection points, total customer experience really takes it to another level. And organizations are saying, okay, so how can we blow our customers out of the water? So what we've just had is Amazon saying that it is no longer happy with the, I think it is the UPS. I think it is in the States, their shipping, national shipping company. I think it's UPS. So Amazon has said, you guys are too slow. So Amazon has created its own movement and its own transportation channel for getting its products as quickly as it wants to the customers. So we've seen a different level of experience coming into the market where organizations are deciding, we just want to blow people out of the water. So at the lowest end, you get customer service, good, poor, bad, anywhere in between. That exchange of goods, products, and services. And at the higher end, we're now heading toward total customer experience management. Of course, Trinidad and Tobago is nowhere near the higher end at this point. We're struggling.
So small, medium, and large companies have different ecosystems and cultures, and they have systemic differences. What are some, you may not want to call it customer service rules, given how you've defined customer service, but what are some possibly customer care rules that you think are applicable to all businesses regardless of the size?
Right, and that's a really excellent question, because I really believe that every organization wants to deliver great service. Sometimes they don't know how. And more than that, they don't know where to start. So in jump starting, let's start with the golden rule. Do unto others the way that you would have them do unto you. If I were a customer coming to buy from me or coming to receive that service from me, how would I want to be treated? Now, of course, this makes an assumption that everybody knows what good treatment feels like. But how would I want to be served? And what is the attitude behind the counter that I would want people to display? What happens when the customer comes onto my premises? What happens if the customer has questions? So a good place to start is with questions. Questions coming from a place that says, if I were a customer, what would I want this company to deliver to me? So some of the answers to those questions would be, I would want people to demonstrate some etiquette and good manners. So I would want to be greeted. Somebody saying good morning. I would want someone to be able to answer my questions regardless of how many questions I have, with the same level of enthusiasm. I would want someone to rush really quickly to solve my problem. So some of the rules of engagement will include greetings, making sure that customers are not ignored, so every customer should be acknowledged. We would want, of course, this is a pet, well, you know that this is a pet peeve of mine, standard grammar. And so we hear a lot, well, you know, some of the customers who come in here, if you don't talk in T&T parlance, they won't understand. Well, that's their standard. But if we have our own standard as an organization of where we want to be, of how we want to be considered and the kind of image that we want to project, it means that how we speak has to be important. We have to set the standard for that exchange and that conversation. So the way we speak is important. It is important to be brisk. So if a customer asks for something, go very quickly, find it very quickly, come back very quickly. If you don't have it, apologize. Another big thing is if a customer complains, and this is where very often we get some of the friction and the thorniness coming up. If a customer has a complaint, we should be welcoming that complaint and thanking the customer for bringing it to our attention. Critical. And that's a big area, service recovery. So if we have done something to upset the customer, it's important to apologize. It's important to move very quickly to correct the situation. It's important to not go on the defensive. It's important to not go on the attack. It's important to thank the customer. It's important to say, let me see how quickly we can resolve this for you. Because at the end of the day, what you want is that customer to leave with a great story to tell. Yes, we dropped the ball, but oh my gosh, because you should have seen how quickly they were able to fix it. So you want customers, those are some basic rules of engagement. Huh?
What are some of the services that DRA Consulting provides, and how do they help companies?
How much time do we have today?
About an hour.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Because we have a long list of things that we...
But probably we can speak to the service transformation product and things in and around that service.
We pride ourselves on making sure that every time we're with a client, that client sees service improvement, sees some uplift in the quality of the services, the service that is provided. And we're moving away. We need to introduce a different kind of lexicon. So we now speak to customer experience. So when we talk customer experience, we're saying, what is the customer's sentiment regarding the service the service that he or she just received? So we talk customer experience. So the thing about customer experience is your customer experience is only good in the minds of the customer based on the last experience. So today might have been a good experience for the customer. When the customer has to make another decision to come back, he or she will remember the last experience. So what we do at DRA Consulting is we like to create a lasting service excellence culture, where the entire organization is wrapped around a service delivery brand. The entire organization, regardless of whether somebody is frontline, back end, in between, everybody vibrates around this ideal of what we want to deliver. So what DRA Consulting does is we go into the organization, we find out what all of their ailments are, what are all of the malfunctions, and everything is on the table. So is the leadership problematic? Do you have lots of IR issues? Do you have people who don't work is there poor team working? So we talk a lot about, we put the organization under the microscope, and we get a really good footprint and a good picture of where is this organization at this point in its state of affairs, because everything affects the customer experience. So our model is service transformation, where we go in and we shift the culture. So we're shifting a culture from just customer service, and we shift the culture up to, customer friendliness, depending on how long we stay, or it can actually go up to a more total customer experience approach. So we are not just the 2 and 3 day training program entity. We really do cultural transformation, because it's only when you do cultural transformation is it more likely to stick for the next 5 years.
What is, so you mentioned when you were answering that when you go in, you see what are the different challenges. So sometimes there may be a leadership issue. Right. What are some of the challenges that you've encountered with companies that affect the level of service that they're delivering? What are some of the recurring challenges that...
The big one is that very often employees are very resistant to change. That's a big one, very, very big. Unless it's an organization that has lots going on and has a very energized culture, people are stuck. And what we've had to do is disrupt that inertia. What we've had to do is to make sure that people are stimulated, people are motivated. And so that's hands down the biggest thing that we encounter, a lot of resistance to change. So often we can't even start with training, and often we don't. We have to get the organization alert, awake, energized, operating in a team-oriented style, so that when we start talking service and service standards and all those other things that require people to concentrate, it means that they have become a little bit more alert to being open, and then of course they're a little bit more open. So that's hands down the biggest.
And for the companies that achieve the service transformation successfully, what are some of the factors that enable and promote success?
So the last question was, what's the biggest challenge? Resistance. This question, what is the biggest success factor, is leadership. We've gone into companies where the members of the leadership team speak it. Yes, we want it. We want our people to move forward. In our industry, everybody's selling the same thing. The spiel is, you can actually close your eyes and you know that they're going to be saying the same thing that you heard in the last company. The difference is when the most senior person in the organization moves away from just the talk and starts talking about the action, and the person now starts to act it because they believe it and they feel it and it's a passion thing for them, the project moves a little bit differently. Because that person drives the entire leadership team. Culture is set at the top of every organization. You look at the top of an organization, you can tell what kind of culture the organization has. And so when the leadership team not just buys in, because a buy-in is, yes, I think we need to do it. Yes, we think it's important. But opting in means that I'm actually leading. I'm actually creating the movement at the top. I'm actually making sure that the champions of the project are really at the top of the project, because these are the people who are going to be leading everybody else. So a big thing would have been leadership engagement and the leadership team opting in. Another big thing would have been making sure that all employees are clear on the project, that they are engaged in the project, that they have an opportunity to share their ideas, because one of the most amazing things that we discover is that junior staff are always excited about delivering great service. Of course, you have those who really shouldn't be in the organization in the first place, but junior staff, they embrace these projects. Sometimes the challenge is often in the middle or the top. So that's another big thing. A third one would have been making sure that there's a little army of cheerleaders in every department who are cheering on their colleagues, so that, projects like these are about changing habit. It's about shifting habits, and habits take a long time to form, and of course they take a long time to be unwired. And so we always have to say to the organization, you're not going to see success overnight. We're not creating miracles. This could be a lengthy process, because we're asking people to pull all the wires out one wire at a time. So the third one would be making sure that people are constantly being stimulated, sometimes in a silent way. So some organizations like to put up posters that are silent reminders along internal corridors. And so every time, even in the washrooms, we've had some clients who've put up some of the posters promoting the project in their washrooms. So every time people come out, they're being bombarded, and those are silent reminders. Oh, I need to own the change. And the final big thing would be individuals owning responsibility for doing what needs to be done. Here's what happens. Sometimes people say, oh, I don't see my neighbor doing it, so I'm not going to do it. And we take a lot of time trying to get persons to understand that they are only responsible for their own behavior. They're primarily responsible for their own behavior. And so that's why our projects take a long time, because you're shifting the culture, shifting habit, and so on. And that last one was like a really big one, having individuals own responsibility for making the change, because the change begins with self.
So last year, CuSPTT was launched, which is the Customer Service Professionals Group, which is a membership platform. Can you speak a little bit to what CuSP is about and how persons benefit from being members of CuSP?
Well, let me say CuSP is the Customer Service Professionals and Customer Experience Professionals Group of TNT. Why was CuSP born? CuSP was born because we think that we need to shift the TNT brand of service delivery. Right now, we're not doing very well, both on an absolute scale and a comparative scale. We just look at our neighbors in the Caribbean, and they're way ahead of us. So we just need to catch up. And we felt that we didn't have a national standard that was connected to excellence, because excellence is your bedrock on which great service delivery, great customer experience is built. So we thought that in order to move TNT forward, that we needed a movement. And so CuSP was born. CuSP is an arm of DRA Consulting, and we felt that we might be well positioned to be able to start this movement. On top of which, people always stop me and say, well, when are we going to do something for TNT? So I thought, well, it's time to do it. You know, there's always a critical mass, and there's always a point at which it tips. And last year I thought that was the time. It had been on the cards for a year or so, and last year was the first time that we created the opportunity for ourselves to be able to create it, to launch it. And the response has been tremendous. Every time we say to someone, well, when I say we, everybody at DRA Consulting or the persons involved in CuSP, because CuSP has a number of members, every time it's mentioned that it exists, persons say, oh my gosh, how can I be a part of it? So we've had several quiet activities and several quiet events, and every time we've had the events, they have been well subscribed. We did a test of whether CuSP would have taken off, and so we had a soft launch, so to speak, where we brought some customer experience practitioners together, and we shared the idea with them, and there was an overwhelmingly overwhelmingly enthusiastic response to it. And so we thought, okay, good, we're on the right track. So CuSP is a group of very like-minded individuals who want to see brand TNT rise, who are dedicated to giving their time and their service and their talent to making it possible. And ultimately, the landing point for CuSP is going to be ensuring that Trinidad and Tobago is respected and admired across the territory for world-class level of service excellence. We have been pretty quiet so far because we have been focusing on putting structure in place. So we have a manager, we have administrative staff, we have committees, we have chairpersons for the committees. The committees have been meeting regularly. And so this startup phase has been foundational for us, because very often what we find is, an idea comes up, it's hot, it's blazing, there's a quick start out of the starting block, and then it dies. So we took a different approach, and we've been programming it as we go along. And one of the phases that we're in right now is the awareness building phase. So for 2020, we want to say to everyone, look out for CuSP, because we have a whole calendar of events, and those events are pitched at public awareness building. The first installment has been a column in the Guardian, Trinidad Guardian newspapers every Thursday in the Business Guardian, in the opinion section, and I write a column speaking about service excellence in TNT, speaking about topics related to how we deliver service, speaking on what are some of the things that companies can do to jumpstart their own service initiatives in their organizations. So the topics are service oriented, as well as all of those things that organizations might be able to do that can help to impact their service in a positive way. So we're very excited about CuSP.
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So, we're very excited about it as well.
These are some questions that were submitted by some of the viewers on my page. Mm-hmm. So one person asked, because she knows that you are your expertise is in customer service, so she asked, how do you respond to...
Do I really have expertise?
Well, by expertise, I think what they're alluding to is someone who's been working with a particular subject matter for a period of time. So within that period of time, there are certain experiences that you would have had where you'd come across certain challenges, and you've had the experience of working through those challenges. So you'd have some very specific insight into that 40 or that sphere. So I think, you know, there's certain, or you may notice certain trends, or having focused on that field or that area for a particular number of years. There are some things that you would know, some solutions you'd have come up with, some things that you would see that work 90% of the time. So I think that's what, but when I say expertise, that's the deconstruction of expertise. It's not
I want to ask about deconstruction.
Because then I'll deconstruct for another 15 minutes. Okay.
So last time.
You know, so we're not alluding to, you know, anyone being perfect in that sense.
I just want to clear that up.
Right. So her question was, how do you respond to negativity online? Because she has, I believe she manages some one or more business pages online as well, whether Facebook or Instagram and social media. And she says sometimes there can be a challenge in terms of responding if someone posts something negative about your business online.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there is that. Sometimes when you have a business, you are called on to find that higher level of yourself, as opposed to having a human interaction, human response, where it's easy to take things personally and be hurt by something that someone says. So she's asking, how do you respond to negativity?
Yeah. And that's a really good question, because it's a reality. It's reality. So my response would be, you have to humanize it, but not personalize it. So you've...
Ooh, that was rich.
What was the word that you used before?
The deconstruction.
The deconstruction. Yes. No, but you have to humanize it so that the person does not feel that he or she is in a sparring room with you. And we always have to remember that that is a person to whom you are responding. But there are maybe 2,000 other eyeballs looking on to see how you respond. And your brand is at stake. So there's no such thing as attacking. It is important to respond in a very gracious way. And then if it requires a deeper kind of exchange, you take it offline. But people must always see, and you said it, always see the high ground. The first thing is always thank people for their feedback, always, because even with someone who is not in agreement with something, it's still an opinion, and everybody's opinion is valid. It may not always be correct, but it is valid. So the first thing is to thank people for their feedback. The other thing is there may be those persons who are just angling for a fight. And there are those persons that makes their day when they engage in friction, left, right, and center, and then they go online and say, okay, who can I irritate and provoke today and cause distress? And you just don't get engaged. And then eventually, if that was their only angle, they will stop coming online simply because you're not taking the bait. So first thing, it is important to thank people for their feedback. The second thing is to look for the message in whatever it is they're talking about, because there's a lot of noise, and the majority of noise in this world is negative noise. Even in Trinidad, and let me just take a sidebar here, even when we speak about customer service and customer experience in Trinidad and Tobago, there's a lot of negative noise around it. Oh my gosh, it's so bad. And when are we going to improve? And people can constantly recount negative experiences because they're everywhere. So it's important to remember that there's a lot of noise. And in the midst of the noise, there's always a message. So was there some shred of something that you can take away from what that person said that you can use to make a positive point? So they may be throwing out something negative, but in the midst of that, keep your business brand in mind and answer something that can be of benefit, not just to that person, but to the other eyeballs, the persons to who own the other eyeballs that are going to be looking on to see how your brand performs. And that's a big opportunity to build your brand conviction, to build your brand strength, and to build your brand value, because people are walking away saying, oh, this is the kind of person with whom I can interact. That person, and then they start commending you mentally that you didn't get into the fray and you didn't descend into the Gael. So that's critical. Another thing that I can share is be mindful of your response or your knee-jerk response to those things, because it's a great opportunity to find out how you react to negative bias. So if you find that every time somebody says something negative, you start to get irritated, take a look at yourself, because that can bleed into your business. It can bleed into the way in which you interact with your customers who are face-to-face. So it's telling lots of things. It's giving lots of insight. And a big takeaway also is, why am I always so quick to go into the combustion phase? Why am I so quick to lose my temper? Why am I so quick to react in a negative way? That's good feedback for you as an entrepreneur as well.
Yeah, it reminds me of what I was speaking about with Arnold when I spoke with him, which was something that he posted online where it said, for someone who owns a business, the places where the business will be weak are the places where the owner is weak, or where they fall short.
Absolutely.
It will be mirrored in the business.
And that's why I always say, before you go into business, it's important that you start your journey of personal evolution, because your business is going to suffer depending on where you are weak. So I totally agree with Arnold. So begin your process of evolution. Put yourself under the microscope. What kind of individual am I? Am I ready to own a business? Am I ready to promote a business? Talk to other business people. Talk to persons and ask them about their downsides to their business. Ask them about the upsides. Ask them about what personality highs and lows did you go through? What did you discover about yourself? So we get very caught up with the glory of the business. We get caught up with the excitement of startup and all of that. And there are some dark sides of business that have to be addressed, because sometimes they rear their heads at the wrong time. And especially if you have a partner, and then you haven't talked about your blind spots with each other. And when you start to talk about your blind spots, if you do that at the front, then you have a kind of heads up point of correcting things before they rear their heads. As a matter of fact, when you do it at the start, it minimizes the number of times it shows up down the road. So before we get into business, and we know that right now there are lots of initiatives being thrown about to get people involved in business. One of the things that I've discovered is that we're not talking to people enough about the downsides of business. So I started DRA Consulting 20-something years ago. But I knew that I would be my own boss from the time I was 16 years old. So of course we won't do the math at this point to find out how many years that's. But I knew from 16. And so I was prepared for the downsides of the business. And DRA Consulting did go through lots of downsides. Certainly was not a perfect startup. But I was prepared because I'd been preparing myself since I was 16 years old. And so that when we actually started, mentally I was ready. Our bank account wasn't ready. The level of effort was another story. But certainly I was in a good mental space to be resilient.